Okay, we're back. It's time for part 5 of how to make a neck through base. In this video, we're going to route the channels for the truss rod and the carbon fiber rods. We're going to cut and level the pitch, and we're going to fit the rods into the channels that we route. There are many different ways of routing these channels. Some people use a table router, and the bit comes up through the table and they run the neck over the bit. I do what's called overhead routing, which is me physically holding the router using this bearing board as a guide. So it's the next closest thing to freehand as you can get without, having some sort of a guide. First thing I'm going to do is unclamp my bearing board, because that's what I'm going to move depending on where I need the channel to live. And I'm going to secure the neck to the table. Before I do that, I'm going to put some little pieces underneath, since we have a little bit of an angle up and down because of the headstock angle. I'm going to stick this under the neck so that it has support. That way I'm not routing onto a bowed surface. And then put this one under here. And that'll get it pretty stiff underneath. That's what we want. Now that that's secured to the table, it's not going anywhere. Now we're going to measure from our bearing board to the center line, because the first channel we're going to route is the middle one for the truss rod. And this measurement depends on the router you use. So you've got to know your router. You want to measure from the center point to the edge, or measure the outside diameter. Split that in half. You just have to do the math. For this one, it happens to be exactly 73 millimeters. I like using millimeters because it's a solid real number. And I'm just going to look here, there, and scooch that over as needed. This is kind of deal where you'll measure 10 times, 20 times, and cut once. Excuse me. That is right on target. All right, that looks good. We're going to secure this down with these big C-clamps. All right. Reposition this just a little bit. The first route I'm going to make is going to be the opening for this end of the truss rod, the access point. And for that I'm going to use a 3/8 inch bit. This is actually a bit that has a bearing on it that I use for smaller pickup cavities, but it works well for this opening as well. I don't even cut deep enough to where it engages the bearing. You got to wear a dust mask, and you've got to wear eye protection, and you've got to wear ear protection when you do this. Routers are very noisy, and they throw chips of wood everywhere, and you could bust a blade and it could go flying in every which direction. So you got to have on the safety equipment. Okay, my first pass on this is going to be very shallow. I actually do this opening in steps. It's never a one and done, one pass on a truss rod channel, never. That's just too deep of a bite. You're going to break bits, you're going to screw up, and it's going to go swimming off, and you're going to screw the neck up. Small bites, that's the name of the game. So for my first pass, I'm gonna go in maybe 2.5, maybe 3 millimeters. This is just marking it just to be sure that I'm centered. From the measurements, I know it's going to be great, but that's all I want to take off on the first pass. And don't do this if you're not feeling 100%. Anytime you're operating a router or any machinery for that matter, if you're not 100%, if you're tired, if you're feeling the results of your bad choices from the night before, don't do it. Do something else. Go sand. Go walk the dog. Sit down, drink some water, whatever. Don't run machinery. Okay, here we go. Alright, so you see here, there's a tiny opening. And remember those marks I made earlier, here and there? That's as far back as I go. Next we're going to take another plunge down a little deeper. Alright, now we're at the point where we want to start looking at some exacting depths here. I simply take the rod itself and I place it on top of the router. Butt that right up to the end mill of the bit, and we're good. So here we go. Okay, the next little pass is going to be slightly deeper than what we have, and I'm going to stop right past the nut where the end of the truss rod is going to stop as well. This is simply to accommodate this little bulbed chrome piece, or chrome, steel, whatever it is, the shiny piece. It goes a little bit deeper than everything else in the rod. And for that, again, I'm going to put that right on top of the plate of my router. Give myself just a little bit of room, and we're going to do that. All right. Let's see, there's a little bit of slag. All right. Let me flip this around and show you what I'm looking at. You can see where I went just a little deeper, stopping there. It's going to need that. And these little chip spots here, that's normal. That's just the entry point. That's going to be totally covered up. The rod's going to go in there, taped, fingerboard, covers all that up. It's nearly impossible to do this without a little bit of a bite on the front of the entry of the bit. Okay, now we're going to run the channel to our stopping point. For that I use a different size bit. Oh, sorry, let me... Got things tangled around my stand here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go half the depth of my truss rod. And for those of you that don't quite understand what I'm doing, this bearing board in front, I'm pushing just a little bit of weight against that, and I'm actually using that to guide me along. I'm certainly not pulling towards me, because then it's going to trail off and go all over the place. So there's a constant pressure against this bearing board in front of me. Alright, when we start, we're going to stick the bit down in this channel that we've already started. So it's going to have a nice open starting point, so there will be no bite marks from this pass or any of the subsequent passes. Pass, and we'll have it. I had to stop midway. My cord was stuck on my bench, which could be bad. All right, and I'm just setting my depth right to this rod. Now that that's routed, we want to drop the rod in and be sure everything fits. And I do that before I unclamp anything in case I need to go back and do anything after the fact. This is good. Nice and flush. Nothing is sticking out above the surface, so we're going to get a nice level flat surface here for the fingerboard to clamp onto. Alright, that's all good. Oh, and another important thing, always check your truss rod. Get a wrench, put it in a vise, check it both ways, and be sure that it has smooth, full range of motion. If it feels stiff or grindy, or like it's trying to bind up or cross thread, throw it in the trash and get another one. Don't even think about putting a bad rod in a base, because once it's in, and it's going to be surgery to get it out. All right, time for the carbon fiber rods. I'm going to take this off for a sec so I can breathe better and talk to you clearly. We're going to loosen up our bearing board and reestablish new measurements based off the marks I mapped out earlier in the last video. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do the rod on the treble side of the fingerboard. And again, when it comes to router bit sizes, you need to find a bit that works for the hardware that you're using. You want to find something that works for the width channel you need to route for your truss rods, whatever it is you decide on using. Different manufacturers require a different size. Same for if you use carbon fiber. You know, you want to find something that's a direct fit. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get this on. When I was much younger, when I started out doing this, I did not wear a dust mask as often as I know I should have. Don't do that. Don't be foolish. Alright. For me, for my carbon fiber rods, they are rectangular. 0.025 by 0.020. I put them in this way instead of that way. Reason being is I want my neck to still be able to move. I don't want to overbuild it to where you can't adjust it. So there's a little bit of flex to be had, but there is added stiffness. If I put it this way, it's a little stiffer, but it goes down deeper. And the last thing I want to do when I'm carving my neck or sanding is sand into the back of a carbon fiber rod channel. So I want it to sit in there as shallow as possible, while still being there and offering the benefits of what it does. So I'm going to set my depth for these. These you can do in one pass because it's such a shallow cut. It's not that deep. Now for these, what I'll do, I've got two marks, one here, one there. I'll butt this up and say, yeah, I got you there, and yeah, I got you there. We're good to go. Ear protection, and we're off. Alright, I've run this channel. Now I'm going to slip this rod kind of back some. It's not going to fit flush because I haven't shaped the ends yet, but I just want to push down and feel that it's flush, and it is. That's good. So we know that we have our depth set perfectly. Now I'm going to measure for the other rod. Not going to change a thing on the router. Use that same bit, same depth, and run the other channel. All right, let's. I want to see if I have enough room to do this without flipping the neck. I'm going to have to flip the neck. Got to flip it around so I can get to the other side. If I had a wider base on the router, maybe then it would work, but not the case today. Alright, we're going to slip this under this neck so that it's not going to bow when we clamp down on it. Good and strong. Alright, now we're going to adjust the bearing board. I found it's much easier to adjust this with exact measurement than it is the other way around, moving the neck to the board. This is flatter, it slides easier. Alright. Something moved. Let's double check that measurement. There we are. Got you there. Got you there. Got to plug in my my battery here. The back. Plug in my charger. The battery's getting low. All right. So this is a lengthier video. There's a lot of steps. But what I'm doing, all of the steps you see me doing in this video, I tend to do all of these all at once. It's kind of an arc of one gigantic step that all has me in the same thought process. It's all prepping the neck for what goes inside of it and what goes on top of it. So we know our truss rod fits. These rods, carbon fiber, once I put them in here, it isn't going to fit down just perfectly flush. Reason being, these are very squared off. They have corners. And my router bit is round, so it has a rounded end. So what I've got to do is block sand and round this off and get it to where it's a perfect fit. Nice and snug. You got to do both ends most times. There it is. Now the other one. So pop it in. Does not fit, so that confirms I do need to sand it. Now this carbon fiber, if you're sweating, put on long sleeves and gloves. You do not want to get this stuff in your skin. It is itchy as fire. I would not wish this on my worst enemy. It's worse than getting into fiberglass. It's just, oh, it's terrible. I saw a question earlier, where do I get my truss rods? Man, there are truss rods all over the place. You can get them from, StuMac has truss rods. A lot of luthier supply companies have them. I used to get mine from Best Base Gear, and then Kerry Nordstrom I found out was supplying Best Base Gear. Those are the Samwoo rods. That's pretty much what this is. I think it might even be a Samwoo, even though the company I get it from doesn't really know. All I know is it's a very strong, very smooth, operational two-way truss rod. There we go. There we go. All right, next is cutting the pitch and leveling that. So we're going to go over to the bandsaw and we're going to slice off a little bit off the top here and then level it up on the edge sander. All right, now these rods, they're in there snug. They're not going to go anywhere. Make sure we have room, and we do. we're going to level this on the edge sander. All right. Let's go bring this over to my main bench. I'll be right back. Okay, let's flip this around. So all that stuff I was just doing on the edge sander, if you look really closely, you can see where the angle of the neck changes just a little bit. Right there. That's where the fingerboard ends and the body portion begins. And that pitch has to be in there in order for the action to work. Otherwise, you're going to have sky-high action. Pitch is a very important thing. And then we have the rods fitted, nice and flush. Any of those little shavings that kind of stick up, I'll just knock those off, sometimes with some light sanding. There you have it. That's how we do that. Up next, we're going to be talking about making a fingerboard, so stick around for part 6. See you soon.